Welcome back, everybody. We know the UK has huge ambitions for AI, but how does our infrastructure make this possible? How do we achieve these ambitions and do everything that we can dream of and more? Well, I'm joined by Matt, Bruno, Claire, and Danny, who are all going to introduce themselves to find out a little bit more about how we can undertake this journey. Claire, do you want to get started with a brief intro to who you are, what you do, and how AI plays into that?
Sure. So I'll do it really super quick. So I'm a partner in Deloitte. I lead our work on AI across government and public services. I'm actually a statistician who started her career in tech. So if I were younger, I'd be a data scientist. So I look at AI as a massive enabler. I've spent my whole career helping government figure out how they get more value from the information that they hold about us as citizens. So for me, AI is just a massive opportunity because it's driving great conversation.
How much are you enjoying this moment that suddenly everybody's interested?
I've been waiting for this all my life.
You really have. Matt?
Yeah, so I think in the last session, the speaker talked about the plumbing. So I'm the plumbing, I guess, for AI. So I have the privilege of running one of the regions for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, huge data center company, huge AI company. So if you go and look at the top 10 largest supercomputers on the planet, my organization built 7 of those. And we are the providers of the current largest systems in the UK. So I have that responsibility and that privilege to run that.
And the plumbing is absolutely vital, which we will come back to in a bit. Bruno.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Bruno. I am an applied research scientist at NVIDIA, also a PhD student at University of Oxford. And I am in the digital biology team. So essentially we build models at scale and application frameworks to enable drug discovery. I am particularly interested in mechanics and symmetries and how they explain molecular systems.
And a company like NVIDIA is, of course, making so much possible.
All the time, yeah.
Danny?
Yes, so I'm the managing director of DataVita. We own and operate AI-scale data centres in Scotland, so we are currently developing over 1 gigawatt of data centre capacity to ultimately power these massive AI systems.
Which is crucial. All of this is part of the bigger picture. We've heard the announcement from the Prime Minister that an extra £1 billion of funding is being used to scale up our compute power by 20 times. I mean, that's absolutely massive. Also, the money that's being invested in the AI Action Plan. How are we going to make the UK the centre of AI that it is dreamt of being? I'm going to put this to you first, Claire.
So I'm going to let Matt talking about some of the plumbing and others talk about that. But actually, let's just think about this for a moment. We all hear £1 billion in AI. And those of us in this room, we get super excited. But quite a lot of the population see that as money that government is taking away from other things. They see it as actually a diversion. And they're not excited by AI. So I think that the opportunity really here is to think not just about AI in the tech, but to think about what the opportunity is that it creates. So actually, AI doesn't just create jobs in AI, it creates a whole different set of opportunities in the ecosystem that exists around those new solutions. It creates different ways of engaging for our kids coming through, and it gives us a great opportunity to really hold on to some of that talent which is in our university. So amazing people like Bruno and the professor who was on the stage before, they're phenomenal individuals, but if we don't place that investment into AI in the UK and create the infrastructure for us to build here, those people will go elsewhere because they have every opportunity in the world. So it's super important.
And what you say about that public response to it, I suppose there's a bit of a disassociation between the cold, hard idea of AI and technology and what it actually means in the real world, what it's going to do for us. Exactly. How is the plumbing working out for us?
Well, let's take plumbing to economic growth. I think this is a major week for the UK. It's like the moment for us. We had London Tech Week opened by Sir Keir Starmer. He talked about £1 billion investment into AI. Today in the spending review, and the leaks this morning also show we're going to spend £750 million on a new exascale research system. Okay, well, what does that mean? On Monday, Sir Keir Starmer talked about the UK being an AI maker, not taker. Why is that really important? That means levers for economic growth. Talent staying in the UK, smart people who've got research theses or trying to create the next major breakthrough, being in the UK. And Jensen Huang was with Sir Keir Starmer on Monday, and he challenged the Prime Minister actually in that session. He said, you are the UK has the largest thriving ecosystem of investment, startups, academics, but you do not have AI sovereign infrastructure to leverage to become that maker, to drive economic growth. Now, I actually think he was wrong, which is a strange place to be to disagree with Jensen, who's the CEO of NVIDIA. Why do I believe that? Well, with the University of Isambard in Bristol, built in collaboration with HPE, we have the largest AI scale infrastructure, which this week also benchmarked 11th in the top 500 supercomputers. That is the first time since the 90s the UK has had a system that we can utilize for growth. So with all of the investment, with all of the focus, now is the catalyst and the time to embrace AI for economic growth, both from productivity and what we can create as a nation for the future.
And it's interesting to put it as those two sides, because historically in the world of tech, we've seen so many companies leave the UK for better valuations. So actually what it can do for our economy, for our productivity, for our lives within healthcare, within education, is actually a crucial part of the picture too. What are your thoughts over this side?
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and it can enable breakthroughs in healthcare. For example, today, the cost to develop a new drug is about $2 billion, and it takes between 10 to 15 years. And there is a large space of potential molecules that can become drugs. If you were to brute force search them, it would take twice, 5 times the age of the universe to go and screen all this library of potential molecules. So AI can help us do that faster and cheaper. But it's not only about the drug discovery process, it's also about reducing costs to the NHS. It's actually about making all the systems, the government systems, more efficient. It's about optimizing logistics and supply chain and distribution and lab automation. So all of this will be enabled by AI. And of course, the entrepreneurs here in the room will know that so many new products and services will be able, to emerge from this AI revolution, as Jensen likes to talk as well.
And we don't always even think about many of these parts of processes that can be sped up. You talk drug discovery. I remember it once being described to me as it's not just finding a needle in a haystack, it's finding a needle in a field. That's how hard this is. AI is giving us incredible power. And there's lots of other elements of that process, even getting the right people on better trials earlier. There's lots of different elements, and I guess much of it is incremental change in lots of different areas that speeds up entire processes and makes things better overall.
100%.
There's often the question raised over the sustainability issue of computing power. Now, this is a very controversial conversation, I know, because people don't always agree. Some of the world-leading scientists really are quite firm about the fact we're going to do so much good for the world that actually, on balance, this isn't going to be a bad thing. But you still have data centers in places like India where fossil fuels are being used more. It's not all renewable energies, despite the fact that big tech companies want to pitch how good their work is. How do you feel on that front?
Yeah, we do have a challenge around about sustainability when it comes to AI. Two big ones, carbon and water. And I think what we need to understand is there is nothing more you can do to impact sustainability than where your data center is located. Everything else pales into comparison. You hear people talking about efficiency, about software stacks. None of that matters. It all depends where your data center is located. So I'll take my own region. I know more about that. So in Scotland, we have a lot of renewable energy. So for a kilowatt of power, we generate roughly 30 grams of CO2. If you move that to London, it's 300 grams of CO2 for the exact same data center, for the exact same load. And it doesn't matter if someone says they're using green energy. That's paperwork in the background. It's not the reality. You then move that to somewhere like Poland, and it's 800 grams of CO2. But yet, some of the largest technology companies are still deploying massive, massive IT deployments into these. Why are they doing that? It's cheap. So I think there's a real obligation to stop greenwashing, to actually start making procurement decisions not based on financial outcome alone. Then we have water. Water is a massive issue, especially within the States at the moment. So by 2027, it's estimated that to support AI will take 7 billion cubic meters of water a year to support. That's 5 times the size of Denmark, which is absolutely huge. In cooler climates, you can use dry air chillers, which run in technology called closed loop, so you don't have to refill the water. So that cuts the water usage by about 100 times. So again, where your data center is located will have the biggest impact on sustainability.
IT infrastructure is clearly a challenge as well. We've got to be able to use this AI for its greatest power and be able to achieve from it what we want. I don't know which of you would like to take this answer, but how ready is the UK, the infrastructure that we've got? We know in huge organisations, like take the NHS, these aren't brand new computers everybody's using. We've got legacy systems all over the place.
There's a few things in this. Going back to the sustainability angle that we just had some thought leadership from Danny on. We have got the race to go and become a proactive, world-leading nation AI with big investment, and at the same time of that is going to have a knock-on effect to the carbon emissions that we're creating. We've got some very clear net zero goals and some sustainability agenda that we all are passionate about for our future. And they're diametrically opposed, so we've got to think about this from a whole life cycle perspective and in advance, where you locate your data center and also how you build these infrastructures. What is really good is there is a huge amount of innovation happening in this space. Let me give you an example. If you think about, and you reference the NHS, but every data center around our country has been built over a number of decades, has typically been built and has to be cooled because there's lots of computational intensive heat that gets created in data centers and is cooled through fans. Well, that isn't going to cut it in the future. And we have now technologies being built which are 100% direct liquid-cooled data centers. And all of the data centers we built for decades have not been built in that particular way. By doing that, they are 90% more energy efficient, lower carbon footprint. So we have to get that in our thinking as we think about deploying at scale. So when it comes to infrastructure design, if there's engineers, architects in this audience, they haven't built before at this scale. They haven't created AI-ready infrastructure. And in fact, if you were just to go and lift and shift an optimized AI infrastructure into the hyperscale public cloud place, it would be incredibly energy inefficient. It would be incredibly expensive. And that's why it's causing a complete rethink in this market. But the innovation coming around cooling technologies, some really neat startups who are reutilizing heat that is created to maybe use that heat to power local swimming pools.
Well, that's it. We need to be doing
so
that,
interesting.
don't we? We need to be actually creating
but we need the
economy
overarching plan.
And I suppose one of the difficulties here, and this is relevant to actually each and every company as well as the entire UK infrastructure, is when something's built for purpose, it's one thing because you're creating it from the ground up. But when you're actually trying to retrofit everything to make it work for what we're trying to achieve, it's difficult. I mean, Claire's been thinking about AI for a long time. What do you make of this?
Well, so again, I think the opportunity here is the conversations it's creating. You talk about all of these other things that we're heating. Why can't we plumb these things in? Now, Victorian buildings make these things difficult, right? The joy of the age of the UK is one that there are some physical challenges, but actually they're pretty rare compared to the places where actually you can do these things. And the thing that I think is beautiful is, actually I was talking earlier on to somebody on one of the stands about how they are describing cost in enabling people to make choices between models. And I said, well, when you say cost, is that pounds? And actually the increasing frequency within which people are looking at cost, not only in the context of pounds, but also in terms of their environmental impact, the carbon cost, et cetera, whatever those things are. It's another way that AI is raising conversations that many people have wanted to have for a long time. And it's creating space for the innovation to bring through solutions. So I'm a massive optimist, but I see huge opportunity in all of these places for us to genuinely use the thriving innovation that we have across the UK to transform things. And it's opening people's minds to different ways of doing it, because we know that what we do in 5 years' time will look nothing like what we're doing today. So we know it's going to be different. Let's take the opportunity to create a different that we want to live with.
Yeah, and it's moving fast and it's different, and people are having to embrace things differently.
People are having to embrace change.
Yeah, which not everybody likes. No matter how much it may be for good, it can be difficult. Bruno, how do you feel about the infrastructure and some of the challenges that are there to be able to have the right chips, to have the right availability of what people need to get anywhere close to what these ambitions are?
Yeah, it requires a multitude of skills to calculate, for example, what is the ideal number of GPUs that you need to process all the data that you have available to train large models with billions of parameters. So we are often talking about blending skills in hardware, in networking, in storage. We need applied research if you want to develop something that is fundamentally new on the algorithmic perspective. So we clearly need to rely on partners in order to decide and bring the right skill set on the table to scale AI systems. But it's not only about the infrastructure, it's about the application frameworks that will sit on top of this infrastructure as well, like GPU-accelerated libraries that will allow you to go from 1, 2 GPUs to maybe thousands of GPUs to train foundational models that will essentially become intelligence factories.
And it's so incredible when we think of power and storage and data and the transformation that we've seen over such a short period of time. But we also, at this moment, where data is so crucial to us, and good quality data that's collected for purpose, that's valuable for what we want to do to it, because our AI is only going to be as good as the data that it's using. Mm-hmm. How should we approach data storage and data collection? What sort of changes are needed to be able to really make this useful? We know AI systems are going to get better and better, but how do we make sure we get the right data, and how do we get started with the data we've got?
Yeah, it's a great question. We are shifting away from the traditional method of tabular data or just speech data or image data stored in databases. Nowadays, people are talking about vector databases, essentially databases that will store the tokens that will allow you to do inference or training at scale. It's a massive challenge. For instance, in healthcare, collecting the data is extremely expensive because you need to go to the laboratory. It's rare. We don't have a lot of good quality data for example, structural biology in the protein data bank. So there needs to be a shift in the way that we are approaching this and the way that we are sharing, distributing this data as well. And many of the people who may work with, for example, graph neural networks here or graph-based models know that it grows exponentially, the data requirements for the terabytes of data as you make relationships between different data points. So it remains a challenge. And we need to consider as well not only classic machine learning on top of image or speech data or healthcare data, but multimodality. And that's where things become more complex as well, because as your data points increase and the modalities of your data increase, the model that you need to train to understand this data and to create meaningful outputs will also increase in size with the current models that we have in deep learning. So it's challenging. And again, I refer back to the partners. It is very important to have multidisciplinary teams working together to do that.
And what you've just described is incredibly powerful. And this is what's really going to take us forward. But it also is quite technical and could actually feel quite intimidating for people who want to embrace AI. And it's one conversation that we're having now about how does the UK as a whole do this. But actually, how about people individually? Because there's also a fear of really being left behind. What do you make of that?
Yes, we are seeing it across all of our customers just now. If we were to gift people GPUs, they wouldn't know what to do with them. They wouldn't know how to get value out of them. No,
well, that's the thing, and the value is important.
Yes, there's a misconception that you deploy GPUs and off you go. I think from an individual point of view, critical thinking's been more important than any time in history. That ability to think has never been so important. Organisations, I think, have to take responsibility for retraining their individuals. It shouldn't be left to the individuals themselves. We are seeing a lot of silos of different research within many organisations, people learning different tools, different things. There isn't a coherent approach. And to be honest, I think it's really up to the enterprises, the public sector, to put training plans in place. Then we need to protect the disenfranchised. With any technology revolution, there's always going to be the disenfranchised. So how do we make sure that we are putting it in at a fundamental level? So areas that don't do so well in terms of inner city, for instance, how do we engage the children or the young adults there so they can get engaged with this technology?
And that training is such a good point. And I think it sits within lots of different areas of AI, even down to doctors, nurses, radiologists in hospitals. It's not actually just about people who you feel may fall out of the current job system. What are they going to do? It's actually across the spectrum, because you can often see an input and an output. You don't know what's happened in between. How's a doctor going to feel sitting there seeing that happen? How do we approach this across all sectors of making sure that people feel prepared and are happy to embrace the AI. It's one thing, it can do something, but should it if people don't understand it?
Yeah, I think just to go back to the data for a minute, because the two are connected, right? Data doesn't appear out of the air. Data is created either by us as humans, or is created by machines that we've designed to create, so systems that we create. So we have a huge responsibility as we go forward to make sure that what we design for the future as we adopt AI and all of the other technologies that sit around it, we design the future that is more fair and more equitable and more open, and we don't simply persist the frankly biased past, which has disenfranchised people and excluded people. So it's raising a conversation, but it also, in order to do that, we need those voices in the room. I was going to refer back to the professor who was on the stage before. He said you need to talk to the nurses and the doctors to tell you actually what a difference this makes. We need the voices of those people. We need the experiences of those people who were previously excluded. When we're designing the systems, we need to build the skills in those communities so that they can participate in the design of the future. And actually, if you look at the next generation coming through, digital is very natural to them. We talk about new technology because it feels new when you've been around for more than about 3 or 4 years. But actually, for many people, it's not new. It's just technology. It's just life. And so just really embracing those people and creating an environment where they can be part of the design of these systems, and really being thoughtful about who's in your team, and does your team represent that breadth, so that you've got all of those perspectives as much as possible embedded into your teams. I think that's what will create that. And as people start to look more at that, and it's their children, their neighbours, who are building these things, I think then it will start to become much more normalised.
Yeah. It certainly is intuitive and instinctive to a younger generation who have known nothing else. There's also an acceptance of what AI systems do, that there's a very human response to. And if it's something like predicting cancer recurrence risk, if we talk about something really, really serious, it's really easy to go to the idea of self-driving cars. There are so many things that sit within this remit. How do we as humans embrace this new world where AI plays such a large part? Because in an accident, there's not that person's got to live with what they've done. And it'll make mistakes that no human ever would, whilst it will also create solutions that no human ever could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So many models that are trained don't make it to the public. So the thing is that, for example, ChatGPT, the architecture that powers ChatGPT is not new. So large language models have been around for a while. But what ChatGPT did is a nice product that is accessible and easy to use by people. And people, well, you have debates about how much you can trust the outputs of such models. But I think this will be pervasive in every industry, in every application. For example, for medical diagnostics. Nowadays, you have models that can beat radiologists in terms of predicting cancer on a medical imaging. And if you have, for example, DICOM images, those are like sets of images on an MRI scan. You have 5,000 slices of these images to analyze, and AI can do that at a fraction of a second. So if you need like an emergency surgery, if you have like an emergency intervention, you want to rely upon systems that will give you the intelligence to prepare better for the procedure, that will give you better insights about what is the disease mechanism that's going on behind that cancer. So in my opinion, I think there is a lot to be done in terms of product, in terms of how AI is now delivered to people. Because in terms of infrastructure, in terms of even like the research expertise to train foundational models, I think we are giving good steps in the right direction. And now it's about translating the research that we do, or the foundation models that we do, into products that are useful to people across many industries.
And in terms of education, what we are learning in schools right now, I was judging some Turing Institute awards recently, and there was an 18-year-old girl on stage who was one of the finalists. And I asked her a question at the end of her presentation, which was great. They'd all done amazing presentations, the nuances of AI that these teenagers had really understood in seeing what problems were and what solutions AI could create better than a human were amazing. But I said to her, how do you feel about the education that you've had? Because you seem to really deeply understand AI and this market and world that you're going out into. And she was like, it's terrible. I feel like I've just ended school at a terrible time before I had the chance to actually allow education to embrace some sort of advice on where to go with AI. And things will change, of course it will change, because we need to start questioning the information that we're given. The idea of whether it's hallucinating or not becomes a critical mental tool that we all need to have. But in that interim period, it's going to be quite challenging, isn't it, for people to actually come from the education system as it is now, the world as we've known it, and move into a world where AI is going to become so critical to everything.
Yeah, I think we're in that horrible spot between transition just now, where there is no certainty. So people were going to university to get trained in knowledge. AI has made knowledge very cheap. It's made it into a commodity. What it's not yet done is deal with experience and the human touch of it. We have a real issue, I see it with my own children, where they fundamentally believe anything they see online. And AI models have the ability to say something with absolute certainty. AI models don't like to be wrong. They don't like to give you half answers.
No, and we used to feel, oh, it's in a video, it has to be true. Obviously, we've lost that.
It has to be true. So, again, critical thinking is absolutely key within that short space. It can replace core knowledge. It can't replace experience yet.
Now, I really enjoyed Neil's conversation just now, and I know that he says we don't need to worry about jobs. And it's still a very active conversation everywhere, and I know it's something the media is very keen to jump to straight away. What does it mean for jobs? Well, I'd actually like to take a different perspective on this, because you talk to a lot of employers, and they love the fact that they maybe need to employ fewer people because AI can do stuff. And I think we don't really sort of embrace that often, because maybe it's a difficult conversation to have. But the reality is, AI in some places will mean things can be done faster and quicker than a human doing it, so fewer staff are needed. And yes, other jobs will hopefully emerge. Prompt engineering will become a massive job. But where does this take us? When we look at the bigger picture for the UK, the ambitions of the UK and how we can embrace it, is this all about greater efficiency and productivity? Are we just going to become so majorly productive that everything falls into place for everyone? Because it seems such a massive shift. How can we make it sound so potentially smooth?
I think it is huge, right? And the way you describe it is completely fair, but also completely petrifying. If we buy into the growth ambition, and we acknowledge that as an island, we have finite space, there is finite capacity. And so if we want to continue the growth and continue to improve the quality of life that we all experience, we've got to find a way to be more productive. In the UK, we are one of the most unproductive nations in the world. I don't think AI is going to fix all of that, but it is going to force us to think differently. It's going to force change, which actually we need if we want to hit those growth ambitions. And those growth ambitions are not about the government getting re-elected. Obviously they are, but they get re-elected because it improves our quality of life, and we then, as citizens, then associate that improvement with the investments and the choices that the government have made. So I think it is about all of us understanding that we want to improve the quality of life. We want our children to live better lives than we have. And at the moment, that's not the trajectory we're on. So we have to embrace the tools available to us to create greater productivity so that we can support growth.
One of the phrases that I stole from a university professor about a year ago said to me, AI will not take your job, but someone who understands AI better than you will.
Okay.
Which really resonated with me, because if you really think about the productivity gains that Claire just referenced at a national level, they are going to be pervasive in every industry, in education, in all walks of life. And AI really is a great equalizer. Why is that? It's because the language of AI is actually human. You can interact with an agent and talk to it like a human being. And therefore, we all have access to that, can be a beneficiary of that. And what is not talked about is the job creation that's going to happen. And you're talking about, all of the components that need to come together in terms of how we design infrastructures, how we build strategies. What we've seen in organizations, they've been very fragmented in their data strategies, an example, where they've got enterprises have data everywhere. We need to bring all of that together. It's no longer possible to have that point of view. And who's going to create the data strategy and in the investment of the most critical asset that you have as a business for future growth, and what are the roles around that as we then look to go and deploy? So I think you're going to see a shift in the job landscape. You're going to see a more productive nation, but we all have to embrace it, and we can embrace it because we can all speak human. We can't all speak computer science, but we can all speak human, and therefore actually we should turn this and ask the press in particular to think about the positivities here, not the negativities or the change that's going to happen.
We wanted to be able to democratize education, healthcare, everything. And in a way, the large language models are democratizing AI.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you so much. I think we've got 30 seconds left. I mean, we could go on forever, but I'm aware we do need to stop. I think just quick final thoughts here as a roundup to what we've discussed, because we've covered a lot about where we're heading here in the future. Any final additions that you want to make in our final few seconds about the challenges and amazing possibilities of where we're heading as a country?
Yeah, we are seeing a new industrial revolution being unfolded in front of our eyes, so we must embrace it, and we need to do our best to actually make useful things with this new technology that is appearing and essentially create this new industry of intelligence that will boost the UK economy.
Will history call it the AI age? This is what I wonder.
That's a great question. I don't know about that, but maybe.
Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, without cheap, clean energy, there is no AI. Without energy to power these massive data centres, it's going nowhere in the UK.
Claire, final thoughts?
I would just say, when was the last time, or when did you imagine the Prime Minister talking about data centres? So for anyone in this room who works in that space, right, this is a properly exciting moment, because people are talking about things which they just never even knew how to spell in the past.
Yeah, isn't it amazing? I studied AI ethics before anyone knew what it was. Suddenly we became really cool, didn't we? Matt?
Don't go it alone. I think what is exciting and a little bit daunting is, as a nation, people in this audience haven't done this before, haven't built data centers, architectures, strategies before, but there's a huge amount of thought leadership, and actually, I think this is going to drive collaboration and partnership. The most successful deployments we've seen in AI into the enterprise and public sector is done in tandem with NVIDIA, the right data center provider, the partners that are investing in this space. Learn from it, embrace with probably the most impactful technology of our lifetimes.
So many takeaways. What a brilliant panel. Thank you so much, Claire, Matt, Bruno, Danny. It's time for an hour's lunch break. Do come back at 2:20.